and good morning, everybody. Let me make a brief introduction, and I hope that this session will be as interesting as all the sections of yesterday were. I enjoyed the day very much, and the feeling is that all of us enjoyed the content, the discussion. And so, let's start. This session on the regional perspective of social democracy 3.0 has to address the challenges we are facing and the responses we have to prepare for the coming years and for the coming elections in the next months, so a near goal. And we have some important appointments. First of all, the European elections, which involve thinking of us, Slovenia, Croatia, Hungary. But the outcome of the European elections will have a great impact on the countries of the Balkan region. And we know that there are plans, thinking of the European election, to move the equilibrium of the alliances in the European Parliament. And Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, is one of the king or queen maker of the situation. They try to move the center-right, the equilibrium of the center-right coalition, which is made up of EEP, socialist liberals, towards a new alliance which moves to the center-right, if not to a right-wing one. We have to be prepared and fight this project. In addition, most countries of this region will go through an electoral process, parliamentary or presidential or local. So it's a heavy period we are facing. But I want to stress one thing. Korčula School, and particularly this year, is an opportunity, a special opportunity to give content to our perspective on social democracy 3.0, because we are in a, how can I say, in an ideal position. Because here among us, we have leaders and political representatives of all countries of the region and of countries of the EU. Then we have leaders and representatives of the civil society. Then we have European cultural and institutional entities, presidents or secretary general. So a good mixture, and from our debate, good ideas can come out. But even if the situation is ideal, the task is not easy. It's not an easy job. Because let's think of these countries. If we go through the political presence in government or in opposition in this region, I mean, we have a complex situation because we are in power in Albania, North Macedonia, in Kosovo, and we hold the position of prime minister in 3 countries. We are in a coalition in Slovenia with a deputy prime minister. We are in coalition at state level in Bosnia. Lana spoke of this yesterday. And we are in opposition in Serbia and in Croatia. So a complex situation. So, but if we make a balance of this region, I wonder if it is true that we tend to fare poorly in elections and that we have a limited impact if we are in power in, so to say, 5 out of 6, 7 countries. I'd rather say that we fare poorly in the EU countries. Think of Sweden, think of Finland, think of Italy, think of Greece. So we are in bigger difficulties in the EU countries than in this region, thinking of the presence in power, in political representation. So my question is, as a premissa to what we're going to discuss, why do we have this feeling? Why do we say that the political parties on the left remain weak and dispersed for stronger impact? Is this concern of today or rather for the coming elections? So this is just to give a framework and the topics we have to address. Yesterday we addressed so many topics which can be used to set up our program and our vision. And the most hinted topic was corruption. And we started from corruption, and Björn was the one who started first, saying that, speaking of corruption, Björn said that closing gender gap is a tool to have a non-corrupted policy. Keep this in mind in our analysis and proposal, because corruption is a powerful tool in the hands of populist, nationalistic, homophobic leaders and parties. So corruption is one thing to be addressed. Then Tanya addressed the topic of solidarity and the need to be better prepared for climate change. So it means that we're not well prepared or not enough prepared to address the topic. Zoran pointed out that the war to Ukraine is a war on values. What are our values? Then democracy. Democracy is indispensable to solve problems and tensions in the region, like the one between Serbia and Kosovo. No democracy, no solutions. Then democracy to fight autocracy, as autocracy, and I'm quoting Ranko, means corruption and crime. Corruption and crime. And then migration and trafficking, quoting the other Ranko. And then we address the topic of alignment on foreign policy. And then reforms of judiciary, freedom of media, rule of law, and fear. Fear as a powerful political tool in the hands of the right. And to the ability by the right to use fear as a political tool, we must respond with the politics of hope, which is fueled by social transformation. But how do we envisage the social transformation of a nationalistic, patriarchal society where the concept of secular state, which used to be a constitutional principle in the 90s, is almost forgotten? So these are some, not all the topics we addressed yesterday. And all this is to be placed in a scenario where it is said, and I'm quoting Laszlo Andor, the social dimension of the EU must go beyond the dimension of the social affair portfolio. Today, the social effect of the European governance depend mainly on the decision of the economic sector rather than on social policies. So, what is our strategic positioning as social democrats? So, Korčula School, the 12th session of Korčula School, called this session to elaborate on social democracy 3.0 and to draw a common program in this region being so complex, and prepare a basis for joint action. Not an easy task, but let's try. So we need a frank, clear, straightforward discussions on the reasons, lessons learned, and some success as possible solution for the joint action. And a recommendation which is in the heart, I think, of all of us. Gender equality must be a priority in this discussion. The concept of gender is increasingly being assaulted by the right and the religious, I stress it, religious establishment. That word, argues for the traditional family comprised of women and men, the recuperation of masculinity, sexual and reproductive rights, and anti-abortion policies. If they prevail, women will be the first victims, but women will not be the only victims. All of us will be. Thank you. Now, we will start with a connection with Maria Joao, who is the president of FEBS. Thank you, Maria, for joining us. Thank you.
Good morning. I hope the sound is fine for you.
Yes, it is.
Is that so?
Yes.
This is with great pleasure that I'm greeting the Korčula School, an amazing initiative we FEPS are so proud to support. And this is one of the first events of the rentrée, of a very decisive year. Look, I followed the work yesterday, but also the great summary presented today by Pia. Many thanks, Pia. Again, you are really brilliant in giving us the general spirit. And I would like to start my contribution for this school today exactly by asking what is our understanding of being social democrats, because this Korčula School is about social democracy 3.0, and it's really important to recall the fundamentals. And the fundamentals, I will make it very straightforward, are the following. We want to have freedom. We want to have free societies. But we also want to have full equality. And so we have understood all of our history of political battles that in order to have at the same time freedom and equality for everybody, we need to have a much higher level of solidarity. And these are three key words to define what is to be social democrat. We have understood that if you want to have freedom and equality for everybody, we need to go to a much higher level of solidarity, which today means to be European, pro-European, because we have understood that it is impossible to provide this high level of solidarity without acting at European scale. So in the current conditions, we can only be social democrats if we are also clearly pro-European. This is my first point for our reflection as a think tank in the school. Secondly, we are progressives. We are not afraid of change, but we want to shape change according to our values. Take the example of the current challenges of climate change and digital transformation. This is happening in front of our eyes. The climate crisis, the climate emergency, and digital transformation changing almost everything in our lives. We cannot block this, but we can shape this for sure. And for this, again, we need to have ambitious European action according to our values, which is to protect all citizens and pushing for a much stronger social cohesion. We are very proud that we were the family launching the most powerful ever instrument for social cohesion, which is the current European Pillar of Social Rights. And we are also proud that all over the last legislature, which is now being concluded, we social democrats and we progressives, we could turn the social pillar, the Green Deal, the digital agenda into a full set of laws, European laws, which are there to protect European citizens. So we need to reclaim this merit. Now going to elections, this is our last school, Korčula School, before European elections. We need to define our message. And a key idea is that, yes, we are proud to have introduced important laws to shape digital green transition and enhancing social cohesion. Nevertheless, we also know, and Pia just referred to this, that we are dealing with a moving political landscape, and we are going to a big democratic battle. First of all, because the rule of law is not being properly respected in many countries. And I don't mean only the extreme cases of Hungary, which is epicenter, or Poland, or some others in the Balkans. This is happening across the board, particularly if you have in mind the concern with corruption. Corruption is a killer for us. We cannot accept whatever kind of corruption. But the democratic battle, however, has to do, and Pierre referred to this, with a change, a political strategy, particularly coming from EPP. EPP, I must say, is divided, but remains the dominant family because they control top posts in the European system. And some of them are considering to go much further in an alliance with the hard right and the extreme right. And these can create a major disruption, including in the direction of the European Union. So yes, this is a very worrying situation. Now, when it comes assessing our weaknesses and strengths, yes, it is true, and I'm sure that other colleagues in the panel, Tom Boyman and others will refer to this. The polls show that on one hand, we have lost our positions in several governments in Europe. This is true. And this means that very likely we will have less representatives in the Council of Ministers, in the European Council, and in the European Commission. So this will be a hard situation for us. But we also keep some hope that when it comes to the European Parliament, we will not lose many seats in the European Parliament. Because the reality is that in spite of losing positions in governments, we still keep influence in the electorate, and we still remain the second most important family in Europe. And that's why we need to have a bold strategy to create a much larger coalition with trade unions, with civil society, and with other progressive parties, really to counter the new strategy from the right and the hard right. But I would like to conclude with 2 points. One is all this is being disturbed by the fact, the major fact, that we have a war in our continent. And we don't have illusions about what is Putin's regime, how they operate. And we know they will act to disturb the European elections and the national elections going on. They have a full army of hackers to disturb our democratic debate. So we need to be prepared to fight misinformation with much powerful tools and to make our arguments very clear. And I would like to say that the next legislature will be marked by this. We need to win this war, and we need to keep Europe united. And that's why it's obvious that one of the top tasks ahead of us is to move ahead with enlargement, to integrate the Balkans in the European Union. Because this is really the reliable way to protect Western Balkan citizens, and they deserve. So we need to be very outspoken about this. Receiving the Balkans is a top priority for us. My final word is about the role of women, because I'm so pleased and so proud that Korčula School was an invention coming from the women's movement in Balkans. In a very intelligent way, very smart way, it was able to bring to the table all the issues which concern women and men in Balkans and in Europe, this Korčula School is also very inspiring. But for me, there is really a central reason why it is so important. Because we women, we know by our experience that we are a powerful force for democracy, for solidarity, anti-corruption, peace. We are naturally like that. So I really believe that we are a leading force to make all this agenda possible. And many thanks again, Korčula School, for this inspiring rentrée we need to have. Thank you very much, and go on with you all over the morning.
Thank you very much, Maria, for your important, interesting contribution. And before giving the floor to Radmila Shekerinska, a recommendation. As the next speaker, that is Sabina, will speak in Croatian, please get your earphones for translation, because Sabina will be the second next speaker. Now, the floor to Radmila. Thank you, Radmila, for joining us. We know that you had some problems with flights, but here you are. Happy to listen to you. Thank you.
Hi, Pia. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for not joining you. As you can see, unlike Maria João, I have a terrible view behind me. This is the Frankfurt airport, so I'm still stuck in the middle and hopefully getting to Skopje later today. It's really great to listen to the wrap-up that Pia gave initially, because I was supposed to speak on the issues of the war in Ukraine. And then when we decided that I joined this session, I actually had a very short period to shift from discussing war and peace into discussing our social democratic challenges, looking up to not only European elections, but also quite a number of national elections. And actually, I fully agree with Maria João. These things are connected, because if we want Europe to prevail, if we want Ukraine to prevail, if we want to continue with maintaining unity, we have to win elections. And if we are to win elections, I think we need to take into account some of our strengths and weaknesses, some of our good and bad examples, and try to help each other in preparing for the yet next round. And I actually thought about less about policies and more about the profile that we need. And I actually saw that I can sum it up with what I believe are the 6 important C's for the Social Democrats in Europe, but also in the Western Balkans. And I'll start with the one that has been already nominated by the questions for the panel today, and this is coalitions. I strongly believe that this is one of the key challenges, key tests for our future, but also for our success at the elections heading and happening in 2024. We have followed this year the elections in Greece, and you could see that everyone was kind of at the end surprised by the incredible success of, unfortunately, conservatives, Nea Demokratia. But actually, if you look at the numbers in more details, you will see that it was not so much that the right went up or forward. It was just that the left was so systematically divided that practically they have given over the victory to Nea Demokratia quite easily. And I think that we have all seen this unraveling in many of our countries. Sometimes, the divisions are inherent in our political culture, especially we in the left. But I believe that our capacity to create coalitions not only with traditional partners, but also to broaden the scope are the first thing in our to-do list. In the case of North Macedonia, this was clearly the lesson that we have learned back in 2016. We have been losing elections several times in a row, And it wasn't until the moment when we have managed to create a much wider coalition. Some of the parties in the coalition used to belong to the other conservative party, but we have managed to convince them to move to the left. If it was not for this decision, if it was not for the patience and the energy that we have put in creating these coalitions, we would not have made it. And when we talk about coalitions, I think that this time we have to be a bit more creative. As I said, it's not just the parties. It's different groups, interest groups, activists, local groups, environmental groups, Greens. We cannot afford to actually believe that we will be strong enough. And it is important to, let's say, control our turf. I think that we are the ones that should open the doors for better cooperation, and we should be the ones showing more strength in making these coalitions. I remember the period when we were organizing, as an opposition, we were organizing protests with quite a big number of different civil society groups. It was an incredibly difficult experience. You know, we would spend hours. Several people are with you in Korčula now, and they will speak. They might speak about how long it took us to create this element of confidence, of trust. But once we have managed to create that level of trust, the benefits were incredible. And this is why I believe that the first important C is the capability to create coalitions. And here we can actually be much better in creating coalitions with groups of young people, women's groups, etc., etc. The two other C's that I find very important are character and courage. Character to stay loyal to your values and to prove that these are not just words, but values that you are willing to fight for, but also courage to change some of our policies, courage to reconsider some of the things that might not be up to date anymore. So it is these two things that the Social Democrats need to prove that our beliefs are valid, but that we are not stuck in the past. And I think that we need to exhibit both of them to convince our traditional voters, but especially to attract new voters. The fourth C is, how do we deal with change? And Maria Joao started and talked about both the climate change and digital transformation. Generally, this is where some of the extreme right is doing very well. And as she said, and as Pia said, they're using fear, they're using this sense of insecurity in order to attract voters with incredibly populist, dangerous, divisive ideas. But what is definitely true, and we have to admit this, and we have to adjust to this reality, is that the sense of insecurity is not just the question of physical insecurity, which was raised by, migration waves. It is insecurity caused by the dramatic speed of change that is overwhelming a huge percentage of our citizens. So you can talk with youngsters, they're overwhelmed with fear and concerns about climate change. You can talk with people from my generation, they're overwhelmed with digital fears and concerns about digital transformation, artificial intelligence, cultural transformations in our societies. So in order for us to fight the extreme right, in order for us to be capable to sometimes fight the extreme left, we have to show the capacity to manage these changes and to provide security in spite of the incredible changes that occur around us. If we are not able to convey this message to our voters, I think we will continue to see declining numbers, generally for traditional parties, but especially for us. The fifth and here I will be the fifth C. I will be a bit politically incorrect, maybe. The fifth C is about consensus. We need this to create coalitions. We need this to make our policies work, to make our policies adopted by different parliaments. We were the champions of consensus. But as I was in the United States in the last 2 weeks, and I was listening to the Republican debate, and it struck me, it was strange on many grounds. But one of the things that the former vice president said, Mike Pence, struck me as important. He said, consensus is not leadership. And we might have a separate discussion about this, but I think that there is a political value in this comment. Sometimes we Social Democrats have invested so much in consensus building for all the right reasons that we have lost our capacity to appear as leaders. And this is now haunting us. If you calculate, if you analyze all of the big political successes of the EU lately, you will see that most of them are social democratic ideas, our ideas. As Maria Joao said, we have to claim our merits. I mean, look at the Green Deal, youth guarantees, the social pillar. All these things are our successes. But in our strong drive to make them a reality and therefore to work on a consensus, we have lost the argument that we have fought for these ideas. And somehow they have become common knowledge, common value, common success. And this is also weakening us. Therefore, I'm not saying that consensus is bad. Consensus is necessary, especially since we were not the first-ranked party. But we have become a bit victim of our own success in some of these issues. And this is why, apart from working on a consensus, we need to strengthen also the sense, the capacity to lead, and the capacity to create this perception, to create this image. And the final C, where we need to do more, and this is not just the Western Balkans, although we talk about this more often, I would say, is the issue that everyone mentioned both yesterday and today, and this is on fighting corruption. In most of the countries in our region, this is probably an area where we came with lots of promises, and in spite of all the successes, there is a sense of disappointment and failed promises. And here I touch upon the issue of gender. Our experience in North Macedonia, I have talked with some of the colleagues around the region, is that really we have had excellent examples how the participation of women at various levels in the government has actually been seen as a much better recipe to fight corruption. I remember a few years ago, the transparency indexes in all our ministries and in government, the biggest progress was noticed and measured in ministries all headed by women. And I don't accept anymore that this is just a coincidence. It happened. It did not happen. It was really a drive by quite a number of women within our own political family who know that anti-corruption is the only recipe for making Social Democrats strive. Finally, let me end by saying that in the Western Balkans, we have probably made the mistake to focus too much of our social democratic efforts on EU. And because of the frustration that we have discussed last year, it is now the Social Democrats who in many countries are seen as counting too much and not being able to deliver on the EU. And that's a double lose situation. Since I was about to discuss the war in Ukraine, I would like to end with just one reminder. Back in the 90s, one of the ideologues of Putin today, Dugin, came up with a list, a to-do list for all Russian nationalists and all Russian fascists, as a matter of fact. And the first to-do list was to take the UK out of the EU. The second item on the list was to divide the EU internally and create huge divisions in each of the key member states. The third item on the to-do list was to continue spreading the so-called Russian world by adding the countries from the Western Balkans in the Russian sphere of influence. I fear that in the shadow of the war in Ukraine, both us in the Western Balkans, but especially the EU, is undermining the dangers that this kind of policy from Russia poses to the Western Balkans, and the lack of EU enthusiasm, both in Brussels, in the capitals, and in the Western Balkans, is supporting, unfortunately, that negative scenario. So let me end by saying, yes, that our task is really difficult because leadership is a series of paradoxes. But if there is someone who can pull this, if there is someone who can reinvigorate the European spirit throughout the continent, it is the progressives. And this is why I believe that we need to step up with our coalition capabilities. We have to strengthen our character, prove our courage, and really show to the people that we will drive this global change for them with the values that we have shown that they matter, both to us and to the citizens. Thank you, Pia.
Thank you, Radmila. Very interesting contribution. And now the floor to Sabina Glasovac. She's Vice President of Social Democratic Party of Croatia and Vice President of the Croatian Parliament. You will speak in Croatian, so we have to put on our earphones.
Dobro jutro, dobar dan, drage kolegice i kolege i vi koji ste ovdje fizički prisutni, ali naravno pozdrav i svim kolegicama i kolegama koji evo ne mogu biti na ovih skoro plus 40 i u prekrasnoj Korčuli. Uzela sam govornicu, Zitin je bio prijedlog, ali zapravo ima smisla kako bismo vas mogli vidjeti sve, da nikom ne okrećemo leđa. Prošle godine, drago mi je da se nalazimo i ove godine, nadam se da će ova Korčulanska škola potrajati. Svima nam je potrebno više rasprave, više umrežavanja, više otvorenih, što je moguće iskrenijih razgovora i samokritičnosti da bismo svi zajedno mogli graditi pravednije društvo, jer svima je nama ovdje jasno da socijaldemokracija nema alternativu i da zapravo pogotovo u ovim nesigurnim vremenima koja su nas snašli, uvijek mislimo da ne može gore, ali onda vidimo da može, da je socijaldemokracija danas potrebnija više nego ikada. A na nama je da to ljudima objasnimo, da to osvijestimo i da im zapravo damo razlog da vjeruju da smo mi ti koji ih možemo voditi i kreirati drugačije društvo. Prije godinu dana bili smo na sličnom panelu, naziv je bio Socijaldemokracija 2.0, danas smo malo aplaudani, Socijaldemokracija 3.0. Nije se puno toga promijenilo ovih godinu dana. Evo, mi smo ti sretnici u Hrvatskoj. Ovo je i svojevrsna, koliko vidim, panel priprema i za izbore za Europski parlament i ovdje bi se trebala i otvoriti raspravu o tome s kojim programom, na koji način, kojom strategijom, kakvom emocijom zapravo zajednički ići i konkurirati ovim sve agresivnijim, sve otvorenijim i sve napadnijim udarima koji dolaze ne od desnice nego od ove radikalne zapravo desnici populističkih pokreta s kojima se zapravo jako teško nositi. Mi u Hrvatskoj smo sretnici da ćemo mi u sljedećih godinu dana imati parlamentarne izbore, Znači mi imamo super turbo izbornu godinu, parlamentarne izbore koji će uvelike odrediti tijek i rezultate i europskih izbora u našoj zemlji. Nakon toga dolaze predsjednički izbori i završavamo negdje u svibnju 2025. Je li tako? Lokalnim izborima. Znači u godinu i pol dana politička karta i situacija u Hrvatskoj može biti prilično zacementirana za sljedeće 4 do 5 godina na svim razinama, a puno toga ovisi i o nama. Kako će to sve skupa završiti? U ovih godinu dana, kažem, nije se puno toga promijenilo, ali su se neke stvari promijenile. Ušli smo kao zemlja u Schengen. Pristupili smo eurozoni. Dobili smo na hrvatskim trgovima klečavce koji kleče svake prve subote. Prvo je bilo u Zagrebu, sad se to proširilo na sve veće, ali i manje gradove u Hrvatskoj koji žele u hrvatsko društvo obnoviti muškost i pokazati ženama gdje im je mjesto. I glavna poruka im je zapravo da su se žene otele kontroli i da žele propisivati dubinu dekoltea, dužinu suknje, jer one zapravo svojim odjevanjem njih dovode u napast. To smo do prije godinu dana gledali u Poljskoj, Mađarska, imate neke tendencije, ali mislili smo da se to nikad ne može dogoditi u Hrvatskoj. Primjerice, dogodilo se. Zašto to govorim? Zato što se to sutra može dogoditi u bilo kojoj, prije svega, zemlji regije, a onda i u nekim drugim, naravno manjem broju, na sreću, zemljama Europske unije. I sad se tu također postavlja pitanje na koji način se postaviti. Postoji jedna škola mišljenja koja kaže da njih treba naprosto ignorirati, ne davati im na važnosti, ne davati im na značaju. Mi se nismo priklonili kao progresivne snage u Hrvatskoj tom stavu. Civilno društvo je pokrenulo svoju tihu misu koja paralelno s klečavcima, mi ih zovemo klečavci, ispričavam se, tako nam je ono jednostavnije, ili kmečavci, kako god hoćete, ne znam kako će to prevoditelji prevesti. Znači mi smo svake subote u svakom gradu zajedno sa udrugama civilnog društva imamo takozvanu tihu misu gdje oni kleče, a mi smo, ali nas čuva interventna policija, znači interventna policija je tamo zbog nas jer smo mi u kontraprosvjedu i mi stojimo, koliko oni kleče mole, mi stojimo i zapravo šutimo s porukama koje su na transparentima. Ali to je naša realnost. To se već vidi u Europskom parlamentu i Fred Matić kada je imao rezoluciju, znamo što se prolazilo u Europskom parlamentu i koliko su na udaru zapravo manjinske zajednice, u ovom slučaju žene su većinska zajednica u društvu, ali su zapravo drugotne u percepcijama nekih ljudi i samim time manje vrijedne, pa zbog toga govorimo o ovom dijelu. Znači LGBTIQ, žene. I mislim da moramo i trebamo ovdje danas razgovarati i o tome kako se postaviti prema njima u nadolazećem razdoblju. Kada sam rekla da se u Hrvatskoj ušli smo u Schengen, ušli smo u Europsku uniju, to su zaista neka postignuća kojima smo svi težili i koja su konsenzualno u Hrvatskoj, neovisno o tome tko bio na vlasti, bili naš nekakav zajednički cilj. Međutim, to je rezultiralo nekim stvarima koje se itekako reflektiraju na percepciju hrvatskih građana Europske unije. Pogledajte, vi ste svi ovih dana u Korčuli, pogledajte cijene. Iz nekih naprednih zemalja Europske unije možda to nije takav problem, ali standard je potpuno drugačiji. Sve to, znači, ove krize produbljuju nejednakosti gdje siromašni postaju još siromašniji, a bogati se na tim siromašnim u krizama brutalno bogate. To je naša bitka. I u Europskom parlamentu i u svim zemljama Europske unije i onima koje to još nisu, ali vjerujem da će to postati. Percepcija hrvatskih građana u ovom trenutku kada spomenem ulazak u eurozonu i to da smo promijenili našu valutu u euro je katastrofa. Jer za sve kriva Europska unija i prelazak u euro. To što su neki, što vlada nije smogla hrabrosti, monitorirala cijene i imala neke zaštitne mehanizme koji neće dovesti do ovoga da se pod krinkom inflacije koja postoji u cijeloj Europi, koja je zapravo nije hrvatski proizvod, ali da se na maržama, na besramnom bogaćenju inflacija plus ulazak u euro zloupotrebljava i neopravdano se podižu cijene. I mislim da je jedna od ključnih stvari koje se mi moramo naprosto vratiti i tema, to je tema dostojanstva svakog čovjeka, to je ono što mi moramo čuvati, i otpornost Europske unije, država koja proizlazi iz otpornosti svakog pojedinca. A otpornost pojedinca proizlazi iz toga da otporan je kada mu daš kvalitetno obrazovanje, kada ga zdravstveno zaštitiš i kada mu daš alate za egzistenciju i za nekakav normalan život. I mislim da je to upravo jedna od ključnih tema kojima se trebamo boriti. Jer percepcija ljudi je da i naši socijaldemokrati u Europskoj uniji, da je to sve birokratizirano, da naprosto život ne postoji, da se ne osjeti čovjek i njegovi problemi. Korupcija je veliki problem, to je rak rana društva, sukob interesa kao predvorje te iste korupcije, ali nisam sigurna, mislim da je to tema o kojoj treba manje pričati, a više djelima pokazivati kada dođete u priliku upravljati, kako se jačanjem institucija i svojim primjerom bori protiv korupcije i uređuje država ili Europska unija. U Hrvatskoj, znači, afere su primjerice na dnevnoj razini. One više nisu u milijunskim iznosima, one su u eurima. Znači, to ni na koji način ne utječe na rejting vladajućih, znači desnice, njihove birače to apsolutno ne dira. Niti motivira, ako je to nama ključna tema, a nama recimo je u našem prostoru parlamentarnom, naprosto ta tema nije nešto na temelju čega možemo mobilizirati veći dio birača i tražiti na tome povjerenje. A ovo što nam se dogode, manje afere korupcijske, znači te mrlje koje se događaju u našim redovima, ne možemo se sebe spratiti. To je sklizak teren. Njima će se oprostiti 100 korupcijskih afera, nama neće ni jedna manja, iako tu ne treba raditi razliku kada govorimo o samoj korupciji. Solidarnost je iznimno bitno i mislim da to treba i dalje ostati jedna od naših ključnih poruka. Vidjeli smo koliko i što solidarnost u onom stvarnom smislu znači u ovoj agresiji na Ukrajinu, u COVID krizi i u svemu, ali mislim da se mi moramo na neki način i više posvetiti. Nisam čula da smo danas spomenuli ljude koji žive od svoga rada. Ja imam osjećaj da mi stalno bježimo od te teme. Ok, vremena su se promijenila. Radništvo nije ono što je bilo prije nekoliko desetaka godina. Ali mi moramo naći odgovore i reći ljudima ne, prekarni rad nije opcija. Platformski radnici. Što se događa? Čekamo direktivu, Europska unija pregovara, razgovara, neke zemlje su krenule svojim putem. Mi smo isto krenuli svojim putem. Donijeli smo zakon prije direktive Europske unije. Znate kakav? Tako da štitimo platforme od bilo kakve odgovornosti. Bilo kakve odgovornosti. Mi zakonom, recimo, štitimo platforme od radnika. Uvodeći nekakve agregatore, nepostojeće posrednike koji, znači, to je naša tema. Egzistencija ljudi koja im jamči dostojanstvo i rad. Znači otpornost. Da bi čovjek mogao biti otporan, mora biti poželjno je da bude dobro obrazovan, da bude zdrav i da mu daš alat s tim obrazovanjem da može raditi za sebe i doprinositi društvu. I tu smo se mi izgubili. Mi smo se izgubili. Recesija, koja je politika Europske unije? Politika štednje. Ok. Znači, i završavam. Znači, nadam se da smo nešto naučili iz prijašnjih iskustava, da treba jačati ljude, jačati njihove kapacitete, samim time jačamo i društvo. I drugo, ne biti licemjeri. Ono što zagovaramo trebamo prije svega provoditi u našim strankama kojima pripadamo i ono što zagovaramo kao opozicija u nekoj zemlji moramo raditi i kada dođemo na vlast. I ono što sigurno nam u ovom trenutku nedostaje, to je ta nekakva strast, energija i hrabrost da budemo socijaldemokracija koja je bila prije, koja ruši barijere, otvara teme koje nisu popularne, koja ne kalkulira i koja naprosto je spremna rušiti zidove i biti prvakinja u nekim stvarima da bi se izborila za društvo kako mi to vidimo, koje počiva na onim temeljnim načelima. Ovim ću završiti i hvala na pažnji.
Thank you, Sabine. Now the floor to Zita, who does not need presentation.
Is anybody in the room whom I should need to do an introduction? I'm back from the European Parliament to the National Deputy Leader for the Socialists, but I'm still presiding the European Socialist Party Women Organization, and I'm super happy to see Anthony Baimer, who has been the Secretary General for the European Socialist Party, and Maria Joao, who has been colleagues in the Parliament, and of course she's the brain of our foundation. Don't forget that the symbol is a brain. And then if I have to tell the brain size in this room, this is amazing. We need to use it because this is a great potential what we have in the room. And of course, I really would like to thank Dasha to organize, keep going, the network and for her super hard work to put into this event and for having me here at the 13th session of the Korčula School. A lot of things changed. I'm really happy that Mirko Tuhovic is here. He has been the mayor of Korčula when we came. And now I am really delighted that we have a woman mayor. Things are changing. In our sister organization, beside the fact that the party leader is a man, it still happens, but the two vice presidents are two women and two men. And of course, past vice president is Sonja Kovac from the region. I'm super delighted. So let's have a clap hands for all those. And of course, as I have the knowledge of the last long years since the beginning, of course, I would say it's always an excellent opportunity to discuss the transformation of politics with a gender perspective. And I just would like to go further what Radmila, our past vice president, spoke. I think on that list, gender equality, LGBTIQ rights, are also an issue at the next European election. So that's why what we need to do, we need to secure the rights that we achieve, because these are in danger. And this is also our responsibility. And I'm really happy that Olof Palme Center, our Swedish Social Democrats, support us on an ongoing basis. But look, you did the utmost for migrants. And migrant does not work for us, and LGBTIQ are not voting for us. So this is a question, who should we do the campaign for? I think we need to secure social Europe, and that's why I'm really thrilled that Maria Joao is here, because without Göteborg, without our past president, former Prime Minister of Sweden, we could never reach it. But the problem is we lose it all of a sudden what we could build up for the last long years. So the stake at the next European election is bigger than ever. So that's why we really need to get on board, dear sisters and brothers here as well. Of course, I can say that the topic of Korčula School is very timely all over Europe and all over the world. We are facing multiple compounding crises that are dramatically impacting gender equality across the board. And I also would like to add, Maria João, what you said. What is also important? Peace. And with peace, that's again, hey, we are listening, God knows. You know, that's back in Hungary. I feel myself in Hungary. But anyway, peace is needed. Because in Hungary, we are a neighbor country of the war. And of course, Orban is using this rhetoric absolutely professionally. And of course, conservative government and the right-wing forces are using these drastic measures, of course, against us. Socialists and social democrats have always been the forefront of gender equality. Indeed, social democracy and gender equality are intertwined. But I think we really need to continue to be the voice for the progress. But we have to be much more vital than before. We cannot stay silent. And I am repeating again, we need to secure what we already achieve. And of course, we had so many great success with feminist, socialists and social democrats, not only in our own countries and parties, but of course across Europe and the world. And of course, we really must fight back against this trend. And of course, this forum is also a great challenge to do so. And of course, to be here in Korčula, it is so important to nurture our network because so many foundations are here. It also means that we are a big family. So it's so important to get the utmost. Because, sorry to say, if our parties are losing, the size of the foundation and the budget of the foundation is smaller, which means it's less and less. So that's also a type of responsibility. So it's so important for the next European Parliament to keep as many MEPs as possible, because then the budget of the SND, the PES and FEPS are also linked together. And without a proper budget, it's impossible to do so. And of course, when they do the cut first on women. But of course, this is always the case. But not anymore, because I'm convinced that we have great women in the leadership, which does not allow this to work together. And of course, how can we stay as strong advocate for women's rights and social democracy? A collective effort together with men as allies is paramount. And that's why I'm repeating again what I told yesterday about Zoran Zaev, because he created a proper word for women. Parity government, parity in the party leadership, and he believed in. And that's what Radmila also told. It's so different, you know, when it's natural that women are in top position. The world runs better, the country runs better, the parties run better when women are in position, as I would like to say. And of course, as we spoke about the next European election, these elections will be, I already told you, a turning point for social democracy and of course for gender equality. But Orban and the populists use the gender as term against us. Gender is a devil. So that's why we really need to be super careful at the election, how we do that campaign. And again, we have to be supervised and simple as possible. Simple as possible, because sorry to say, the world has been changed. So people don't listen just TikTok for 1 minute. So it's impossible, but we need to make sure that we can get these small sentences that catch the eye of our citizens. And of course, we must remain firm in our goal to create a feminist Europe, a Europe of people in which women are in the center. Women should feel that we are the party who are still keeping the best for them. I cannot tell any other party who did what we did for women in Europe or all around. So that's why I would say, and I'm very thankful for the group, and we need to push the EU Charter of Women's Rights. And of course, we have to make it clear, if they don't vote for us, then we can lose it all of a sudden. And what we also need to do, this is what Fidesz or Orban is doing very well, we need to mobilize people. We need to mobilize because the price of the mobilization is going to be properly shown. And of course, what I'm always telling to Helena Dalli, my great friend, we need to establish a formal council configuration for gender equality, diversity, and of course, anti-discrimination. But we must remember that elections are also the perfect opportunity for the right wing and anti-gender across to push their agenda too. Can you imagine that Orban has the so-called megaphone system? The amount of money they put into is more than the whole general election cost for all the parties. And this is our taxpayer money. Orban is brainwashing the Hungarian society. We should not allow to do this happen. So that's why I would say it's very important to be here together. And of course, a guiding principle for both social democrats and feminists is that solidarity matters. But I have to be very sincere. We have a missing solidarity. If we could have the same solidarity that the others, then we could not fall apart. Look all around the region. A lot of parties fall in pieces because the former party leader created another party. You see, we have to be also realistic. And of course, don't forget one thing. As Eva Kali, one of our vice presidents, had this case, Orban and all the right wing is going to use against us. I know that there are much more right wing corrupted persons who are not seen. But the problem is our voters does not accept that socialists and social democrats are corrupted. So that's why I think it was a mistake that our party leader, Stefan Löfven, accepted a lobby position prior to the election because it is weakening us. I think it's not good. We talked with Paula about it. It's not good because we are going to be attacked. And I feel very sorry to tell this, but I think it's important to make sure that this is going to happen. So anyway, it's always a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to see the funding members, of course, Dasha, Marta, Lovorka, and all the others. It's a privilege to be in Korčula, and I'm sure, and this is, Tom, was a type of request of yesterday. How can we use this potential? And I think so many excellent ideas came. And then one last point, which I almost forgotten. The Commissioner, Olivier Varhelyi, is a Muppet of Orban. So the enlargement is endangered. So he knows exactly what is going on. So we really need to have a very clear message concerning EU enlargement as social democrats, because hope is not enough, sorry to say. Credibility is the key, because that's why, they lose the trust of the EU and all the institutions. So let's make sure that we make an excellent result, but without our sisters and brothers of the Western Balkans, we really cannot do that. But we need you badly at the next EU enlargement to get a greater Europe. Thank you so much for having us together, and I would say, voila.
Thank you, Zito, for the, usual passion. And now the floor to Paula Carvalho Olofsson, who is the International Secretary of the Social Democratic Party of Sweden.
Thank you, and this is my first time in Croatia. What a pleasure it has been to be here. So thank you so much to those who have organized this. It's been great. Yesterday was really gave food for thought, and today we're continuing with what I think is really much of the answer to many of the questions raised yesterday. Because we talked about a lot of challenges and problems yesterday. And we can see many global trends. Miller mentioned many of them before: digitalization, climate change, globalization, the intertwining of the world's economies. I mean, we all feel it. And upon that, the war in Ukraine. It has consequences. There's a strain that people feel in their everyday lives, an economical strain. We know this. It causes inequalities, injustice, vulnerabilities that the far-right populists are very, very quick to use and to exploit these vulnerabilities and cause even more division, more polarization. It's what they do. It's their raison d'être. And it's up to us to stop it, because if we don't, we know what will happen. It will really have an effect on the democracy and the way we want to live our lives, our lives on this continent. The change in living conditions is a good breeding ground for these forces. But the good thing is that the best remedy is really building strong, resilient, and fair societies. So we already know what we need to do. We need to trust in our own ideas and do the job. Sounds very easy. We know it's not. Sweden is seen by many as really a beacon of light. We have a strong welfare state. We're really social democratic. We have Olof Palme. People still know who is in many parts of the world. But even in Sweden, we can lose power to neo-fascist with Nazi roots, mind you. The Sweden Democrats, the right-wing populists in Sweden, they were born out of a neo-Nazi party. And they are polling at around 20%. They're the second largest party in Sweden. I know this is not giving you all much hope, but it's the truth, and we need to face the truth. So if this can happen in Sweden, it can happen everywhere. But the good thing is there are lessons to be learned. I'm going to try to share some of what we have learned today. First of all, we cannot take things for granted. Yeah? And this is actually also what is difficult for a country such as Sweden. When we have achieved so much, people start taking it for granted. So it's really up to us to show that things can also, the things that we have achieved, they can be lost. Keeping our focus on what is important, on building these strong societies. I mean, we know that at the core of this is jobs, right? Jobs with fair wages, with good conditions, so people can go to the job, earn a living, and thus be part of society. Education for the young, welfare for all, also security, so people can feel the security and the freedom that Maria João was talking about. But it's not just any jobs. It needs to be good jobs, and it needs to be for all. And I will just, as a reminder, point out that 1/3 of the women in the EU, they work, but they don't have paid works to go to. Imagine the potential if we could raise these numbers. And here is also a possibility for us with the climate change, which is one of the big challenges. When we can combine and use this transformation to create good jobs with good wages, it's happening in Sweden up in the north. We have what we call a green industrial revolution, where areas where people were leaving these areas, nobody wanted to live there anymore. There was no hope, there was no future. But now there are big factories coming in, gigaplants, building batteries that we need in the green transformation. And all of a sudden, we have the opposite problem. We need to make sure that there is housing for everyone, that there is daycare for the children, so that both the moms and the dads can go to work. And all of a sudden, there is hope, and there is a future in these areas. But it wouldn't happen without brave social democrats who have the right instincts and dare to do it, dare to invest. The Sweden Democrats don't want it. They talk about the climate change as in, well, more people die from the cold than from the heat, so maybe this is not a big problem. And people can hear this. People, yeah, you know how it is. They trust the easy messages. So when we stick to what we know is what we need to do, building these strong, fair societies with equality, with gender equality, with democracy, with the rule of law, with all these values that we have been talking about, this is the best way to fight the populist. But is it enough? No, because as was already said here today, we also need to win elections in order to do these things. And this is where we went wrong in Sweden. With these populists, we in Sweden, we tried to ignore them, pretend that it wasn't happening. We tried to belittle the problems that they were talking about, the things that people were listening to. And we tried also to accept their frame of talking, their cultural wars as it is. None of this worked. Of course, now we know. So what does work? Well, we're trying it now, but from talking to others who have been in similar situations, focus on the real issues, the real problems in society. Always keep talking to the people about this. They're going to try to make out that the problems are different from the ones that we see. But we have problems in our society, real issues. So keep the focus on that. Build these strong societies. Talk about that. Talk about, I mean, people have right now problems with paying the electricity bills or the cost of living because the vegetables are expensive. This is what matters to people, not the make-believe problems that many of the populists want to make out as the problems. So this is the way we are taking now in Sweden, trying to do this. But what we know, because it's not only in Sweden that we have these problems, we have them all over Europe and in many parts of the world. So we can really learn from each other, because that is what they are doing. The right-wing populists, they are learning from each other. They get their tricks and they teach each other. So this is perfect, what we are doing here now. Getting together, talking about how we can learn from each other. And building, I mean, talking about coalitions and cooperations, this is really at the core of what we can do. It's in our hands. It's up to us. And it's the answer. It's as difficult and as easy as that. It's social democracy and cooperation. And it's beautiful. So after quite a lot of discussions yesterday and today about challenges and problems, I think we need to trust ourselves and get on with the job that we are here to do. Because when we are sincere, this is what people, the voters, the citizens, that's how they trust us. It's not always easy, but it's the way forward, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paola, for your lesson learned transmitted to us. And now the floor to Anthony Beimer. Welcome. And Anthony Beimer is the Secretary General of this S&D group in the European Parliament. The floor to you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Pia. I hope you hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we do.
Is that okay? Excellent. So thank you for your summary, and Maria João, Radmila, Sabina, Zita, Paola for interesting observations. I learned a few things about fighting corruption, for example. We know as an S&D group, we were infiltrated by a criminal network and had to act with force. So I join you from from Yanina in the Greek mountains. I hope you see me and hear me clearly. I thank for giving me the opportunity to join you by Zoom. Now, as Secretary General of the S&D Group in the European Parliament, I could take the safe option and transmit to you a number of officially agreed S&D Group policies, but I think that in the context of the Korčula School think tank, I should allow myself some more personal observations ahead of the next year's elections to the European Parliament. These will be held from 6th to the 9th of June 2024. So what do I wish for our political family in the year to come? I'm going to share with you 6 wishes. Radmila had her 6 C's. I have my 6 wishes. Number 1, let's be aware of the crucial role we have to ensure the combined putting into practice of climate justice and social justice. We remain the force defending social justice and decent minimum income, guarantees, working conditions. But the red-green agenda is our new, unique, hardcore policy basis. In the country I know best, the Netherlands, the Social Democrats and Greens have decided to join forces with one list and one program under the leadership of Frans Timmermans, who just stepped down as Vice President of the European Commission. Whether we will become the biggest at the national elections of November 22 remains to be seen. But it's a center-left attempt to get back to power, which is, I think, relevant for our whole political family. Wish number 2. Let's be ready to take responsibility in migration and refugee policy. We have strong humanitarian principles to defend in the face of an upcoming extreme right instrumentalization of migration and refugee policy. At the same time, we should not leave the issue of EU borders to the political right. We have a strong European Commissioner to work with, Ylva Johansson. Most of our parties over the last decade or decades lost electoral strength because of migration. People want answers, not prayers. The present situation of thousands of deaths in and around the Mediterranean is unacceptable. Treating all economic migrants from wherever they come as potential refugees in the absence of an effective return policy leads to an impossible situation for all concerned. My wish number 3. Let's remain die-hard Democrats. Let's help to rebuild the Socialist International under the leadership of Pedro Sánchez and make full use of the Progressive Alliance in this context. Let's also remain die-hard Democrats by being proud of our record on women's rights and LGBTIQ rights. Let's be proud that Europe is the world region where activists find a safe place. Let's fight gender discrimination globally, with Afghanistan as the most extreme case, but also within European countries like Hungary and Poland, and within the electoral programs of upcoming extreme right forces. Wish number 4. Let's stick together when it comes to our solidarity with the Ukraine. Yes, we do need to reflect on the ultimate goal of peace with a ceasefire as a first step. This, however, should not undermine our continued, also military support for Ukraine to defend itself from a brutal invasion. My number 5. Let's be aware that the right wing in Europe, and some of you refer to it, is undermining the pro-European democratic majority in the European institutions, in particular the European Parliament. The conservative Christian Democrat PPE is openly flirting with Eurosceptic, hard and extreme right-wing parties ahead of next year's elections. They hope that with this new alliance, they can isolate us. There's no better answer to this than to become the biggest group ourselves, which is not impossible, and work closely with Greens, progressive liberals, and those Christian Democrats who want to remain in the Democrat pro-European bloc. Last but not least, let's have the courage to talk about enlargement of the Western Balkan countries in the context of the next elections to the European Parliament, even if election pollers tell us that the issue is not so popular. As socialists and social democrats, we have a particularly long-term responsibility. Fully agree with Radmila that the drama of the Ukraine war is and should be another incentive to bring together urgently what belongs together in our common European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, because your ability to be focused, synthetic, and clear in the message is really an example of how to learn and to build capacity in communications apart from the weight of the content. Thank you. Now, the floor to Alexander Spasov. Alexander is the advisor to the President of North Macedonia.
So good morning, everyone. I have the pleasure and honor of speaking twice on this Korčula School. Yesterday, I spoke about EU and the war in Ukraine, recommended by Radmila, who was not able to speak because of the reason she already stated. I should say this, Radmila was my inspiration to join the Social Democrats when I was 16 years old. She was the president of the youth organization. And indeed, in that time, I remember my party, the Social Democratic Union of Macedonia, was a popular movement in my country and a real alternative to the nationalists. Also in the Balkans, we didn't have time like in the European Union in the 90s when nationalists were on retreat. It was this age of the third way. We always had nationalists, but social democrats in North Macedonia, in Macedonia at that time, managed to be a popular movement that would oppose the nationalism, and eventually we won that battle in the 90s over the nationalism, and we didn't have war like in many other Balkan countries. Many things were said here. I'll try to be as short as possible. So I will just say a few things that are primarily focused on the Western Balkan social democracy in the Western Balkans, since the social democracy in the Western Balkans is slowly but surely disappearing and losing the battle with nationalism. But I hope that some of my proposals or my thoughts can be also applicable for the European Union. First, I would say that our general task is to transform our parties from liberal elitistic parties to popular movement. In order to be competitive to the nationalists, we have to back, in a way, in this new age, to our roots, and that social democracy must be a popular movement of the working classes. Why I'm speaking about working classes? Because there is no one working class as it used to be in the past. Now there are different working classes, but still they are connected because they live from their salaries, not from their capital. That's the first thing. Second thing is about popular movement. We have to start speaking about topics that we are somehow avoiding, trying to be politically correct. I mean, we have to speak for every topic that the right-wing party speaks, but develop our own narrative. So we cannot avoid any more topics, and I would raise one topic that we are avoiding because of certain reasons. And third, that already Radmila stated, we have to learn, and those who have experience, for example, Macedonian Social Democrats, we have to continue building coalitions. I mean, that's the future of the left. That is how we can, again, become a popular movement. But above else, we have to forget about being a liberal party as we used to be in the 90s. Anthony Giddens is not anymore popular. Third Way is dead. And we have to go back to our roots as a popular party and leave the elitism to the liberal parties. They also have to have voters. They will be eventually our coalition partners, but we have to leave that space for the liberal parties. Regarding policies, we have to focus on three things, at least in the Western Balkans. First, I would again mention anti-corruption. Why it is important here, our colleague from Croatia said that right-wing voters are not reacting to corrupted politicians from the right. We had also that experience, but it's not that they do not strive for justice, it's because of the opposite, because they think that we are the same. I mean, we will expose affairs, we would speak about corruption, but nobody would go to jail. We have to learn as social democrats that in order to finish a corruptive affair, people have to end up in jail and their property have to be seized and back to the state budget. That is a proper way of dealing with corruption. I mean, if we have several of these cases, and unfortunately in North Macedonia we missed to implement that project, you'll see how the people, when they have a sense of justice, because people are not interested in the rule of law and the work of courts. They are interested that they want to feel that there is justice. Justice means that stolen money are back to the state budget and that certain people end up in jail. That is justice. That is how a feeling of justice should be created. Second thing is that we have to turn to the working classes, or I would say middle classes. Why? Because middle classes are unfortunately now, at least in the Western Balkans, a fertile ground for nationalism, clerofascism, because they are disappearing. I mean, we are losing the middle classes. Here was said that we have rich people and poor people, or people that cannot live, cannot have a decent life from their salaries. And social democracy is always winning when we have stronger middle classes. In that regard, we shouldn't be afraid of applying policies that would hurt some businesses, but that would contribute towards the well-being of the middle classes. I mean, at least in the Western Balkans, most of our social democratic parties are too much calculating about the reaction of the businesses, especially of the big businesses. And we have that practice in our country, and it's happening now. Big businesses are always funding nationalistic and right-wing parties. So I don't know why we are so eager to be close to big businesses, because they won't fund us. Let's be very practical. They won't fund us. They would always support and fund the right-wing parties. And the third topic, policy topic, that we are not speaking about is demographics. I mean, I cannot understand why some social democrats think that speaking about demographics is anti-gender. It is not. In the Western Balkans, we are nominally 18 million people, all 6 countries in the Western Balkans. Former Yugoslavia, in 1999, when it was dissolved, had almost 23 million people. In the 90s, we were 18, nominally. Practically, there are no more than 13, 14 million people living in our countries. The demographic structure of the population is disastrous. Many people are older than 60, 65. We don't have any more younger generations because they left our countries. And I cannot understand how we can speak about economic and social development of our countries in the Western Balkans without having a younger generation that should create that economic and social development. As I said yesterday, Our opposition now is preparing a program for rejuvenation of the nation. That would be an anti-gender program. But the topic would be legitimate. They would speak about demographics. And we cannot oppose them and say demographics is not a topic. It is a topic. They would speak that the problem is cultural, that women do not want to have more children because feminism and gender issues destroyed the traditional family issues. But we can criticize that, but it's not enough. We have to have a counter-narrative. And the idea is to have a better demographic, or let it put it bluntly, we need more children. But we have to have a social democratic answer how to have more children in order to avoid these regressive tendencies that we are facing. Now, 3 tactical issues that are important. First, we have to learn how to speak to the people. Because I think that we lost somehow the feeling we're using too much phrases, too much, again, political correctness, that's all good. But we have to learn how to speak to the people, especially how to speak to the youth, the new generations. With Paolo, we discussed that issue yesterday during the dinner, and that is why I'm emphasizing the youth. When we learn how to speak to the youth, and in order to learn how to speak to the people, we have to make profile of groups in the middle classes. So we have to have a tailored narrative. For every group, a tailored message. We have to have this, one message, one size does not fit all. We have to have tailored messages. And when we have these messages, we have to learn how to communicate these messages. We spoke yesterday with Paolo about the social media. We're not using the social media in an effective way. Everyone has a profile, all parties have, but we have to learn how to use these communication channels, because we have to forget that people, as Zita already said, would be very much interested into reading long books about social democracy. They are not. They have no time, no interest. This is a show world, and we have to adjust ourselves to the show world in order to win election. And third, we have to revive internationalism. I mentioned that yesterday. Someone said that EPP is divided. Unfortunately, it's not. They are divided. Of course, they have their issues. They are afraid of the far right. But I don't believe EPP, because they would unite with the far right. If they see that there is no other alternative to govern, believe me, EPP parties would support always right-wing sister party, and they would support always they would support also some far-right parties in order to stay in power. Internationalism was a characteristic of the left. But somehow, in the meantime, I think we lost internationalism. We are speaking a lot about solidarity, but when it comes to real action, we have to develop more strategies to support our sister parties, even when we not agree on every point with our sister parties. Because now our opposition that has clearly anti-European statements is still supported by EPP, although they are not very happy that they have a sister party that is closer to Fidesz in Hungary than to CDU, but still they think better to have a right-wing party in government than have social democratic party that maybe is pro-European, but is not. It's not ours. So these are my short recommendations from my experience, but I want to repeat once again, the main task, the most important thing for the social democracy is to learn and to transform again to be a popular movement as we used to be, and that is how we can effectively oppose the right-wing parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alexander, for your contribution, and particularly thank you for raising the problem of demography. It is a real problem in this region, not only due to the lowered birth rate, but also for migration. People, young people in particular, leave these countries, and this is a real problem. Now, I invite to come here the discussant of this panel, and I'm inviting Adna Gibrani from the Swedish Parliament. Oh, you're already there, so, and then Binka Losika and Harald Troch. So you are here. So, Adna Gibrani
first. Look, we are a bit beyond our time. Can I ask you not to go beyond 5 minutes? So there will remain 10 minutes and not half an hour for coffee break. Thank you.
I will try to do it as fast as I can, of course. Good to see you all. As mentioned here, my name is Adnan Dibrani. I'm a member of the Swedish Parliament since almost 14 years now, but I'm also born in this region. So therefore I know both of the systems quite well. A lot of things has already been said, so I'm just going to emphasize some of the things that I think is important. Some things maybe you don't want to listen to, and other things I feel that we should be honest. Someone said we should be honest. We are among friends and so on, and I really want to tell you, keep that in mind when I say some things, and I will try to have one red line in this, all of these things that I've wrote. For me, it's really important that we always talk, and Alexander said it in the end here, with the people in the easiest way, because then people understand what we are talking about, and Paula was in it earlier also. We need to talk about the problems that the people are feeling. But most of the time we are as politicians on this level and the people are here. One thing that we mentioned is consensus, and Radmila, I think, talked about this. When I hear the word consensus, I don't think Balkan, to be honest. But I feel Sweden when I hear consensus. And I think consensus is quite good. By building consensus, we have managed to more or less be in power for 100 years in Sweden, and then transformed Sweden from one of the most poorer countries in the world to one of the richest. So I don't feel that consensus is bad. And why am I saying I don't feel that consensus is a word that I see Balkan? Because we don't even have consensus among ourselves. As soon as we think differently, we are two persons in the room, we create three parties. This is not consensus for me, and I really emphasize this. I want you all to speak with each other, both within the countries, I always say that, but also within the region. Because without doing this, we cannot manage a real difference. And I now realize that I'm going to talk more than 5 minutes, so I'm just going to try to sum up fast before I do something stupid and talk for 10 or 15 minutes. One other thing that I want to mention that I feel is really important is that we often want to come to power. But when we are in power, we don't know what to do next. So we do not only need policy changes, we also need some kind of structural changes within the party. I can talk about Kosovo because it's easier for me to talk about that country, but it's more or less the same about all of the 6 countries. We have a party that has 51%, but they struggle to get quorum in the parliament. So they promise a lot of things, good or bad, doesn't matter, but when they are in power, they cannot do anything because their own MPs are not there. So we need to do this kind of help. This would never happen in Sweden. So we need to help each other here. I mean, I'm the whip of the finance committee in Sweden. I have former Minister of Finance, Mikael Damberg, there. But Mikael Damberg needs to be in the finance committee. If he's not there, he needs to give me a call and tell me why he's not going to come. And I will say, okay, Mikael, I will try to find someone else. It's a mutual respect and trust. And the same needs to be here. The word trust is really important. I don't feel that we have it sometimes in the Balkans. So this is another thing I want to send to you. The last thing I'm going to say, there's a lot of things here. We have an election next year. Please, the European elections, first of all. It will be a really important election for us all, both as a European family, but also for the Western Balkans and its future. We need to tell our diaspora, go out and vote. Because we have a lot of diaspora that doesn't vote. But what's more dangerous is that instead of engaging in the politics in their own home countries. They come to the Balkans and pretend to be some kind of experts. And I encourage you to listen to the real experts, but tell the majority of the diaspora that comes and tries to tell you a lot of things, please do politics in your own home countries. Go out and vote. That's the first and primary thing, because they don't. And leave the rest of it to us. And of course, you can always ask me, because I don't belong to that diaspora. I'm the real expert. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adnan. And now the floor to Vinka Lozica. Vinka is a councillor here in Korčula, representing the New Left Croatia Korčula After Party. The floor to you, 5 minutes.
Na hrvatskom, može? Slušalice onda svi.
Okay, so we need to put on our earphones.
Veliki pozdrav svima i zapravo ja vam želim izraziti dobrodošlicu. Ja sam tu lokalna, ne volim čak ni reći političarka, ali mi smo, ja već godinama se tu bavim nekim našim društvenim promjenama i zahvalna sam zapravo Daši da me od 2012. godine mi daje priliku da razgovaram sa ljudima iz visoke politike i iz evropske visoke politike i svake godine zapravo od te 2012. ja tu dajem nekakvu lokalnu perspektivu nekog malog čovjeka s terena. Mi smo od 2012. u našoj lokalnoj zajednici dosta toga pokrenuli. Kao prvo, ja uvijek za sebe kažem da sam feministkinja, imamo feminističku radio emisiju na lokalnom radiju već 10 godina, znači 2014. I nekako u tom periodu, kako bi rekla, to moram reći s obzirom na iskrenost cijelog ovog događanja, ja jesam razočarana SDP-ovka i bivša SDP-ovka, ja sam izašla iz naše Hrvatske socijaldemokratske partije, jer sam bila razočarana neučinkovitošću zapravo i mlitavim odgovorima na jako goruće teme kojih je tada bilo užasno puno, a danas ih ima još i više. I ono što je zapravo meni žalosno, zato što i dalje smatram da je to naša, mi smo prirodno povezani, mogu ja biti ljevije od SDP-a, ali opet je to naš prirodni bazen u kojemu bi trebali raditi skupa i na istim vrijednostima, taj SDP ide još i sve gore i gore. Tako da ne vidim neku dobru trenutno neki popravak na vidiku, ali evo ostavit ćemo prostora, možda se nešto ipak dogodi. Dakle, ja sam u Novoj ljevici i mi sad recimo da smo crveno-zeleni, mi smo crveno-zeleni i ja stvarno vjerujem da je budućnost crveno-zelena, jer ako ne bude, bit će crna. Tako da, evo, to je ono što ja mislim. Tu je iza mene, pokazali su ovi naši tehničari, naš projekt od 2018. Znači, to je nešto što je nama nedostajalo, ne samo u Korčuli, nego i na razini Hrvatske kao političke, kao nekog političkog spektra. Mi smo htjeli razgovarati o važnim političkim temama, ali direktno i na najnižoj mogućoj razini. Znači, odmah da nam dolaze ljudi s visoke razine razgovarati direktno s ljudima u publici, kogod želi da se uključi u raspravu, da čujemo direktno s terena feedback o važnim temama. Mi smo ga nazvali Korčula After Party i ovo je naša web stranica, ako budete htjeli možete ga izgooglati, Korčula After Party. Ovo je 6. koji će se održati 3. vikend u 9. mjesecu. Teme su znači konkretne. Ne razgovaramo o teoriji, mi tu puno razgovaramo o teoriji i o programima. Mi smo htjeli razgovarati jako puno, znači, o nasljeđu kojega imamo, o nekim temama koje smo smatrali da su završene, koje smo izborili i one su gotove, predstavljaju naše temelje, ali nažalost one nisu gotove i naši su temelji uzdrmani u potpunosti. Znači, sve te teme za koje smo bili sigurni da su gotove i da su završena priča i neće se više mijenjati, one su uzdrmane, od ženskih prava, od općenito tih nekih sloboda i ljudskih prava, solidarnosti, sve je to ugroženo sada. Tako da želimo razgovarati o nasljeđu koje imamo, želimo razgovarati o trenutnoj situaciji, kako se urušava sustav koji je bio stvoren, taj sustav države blagostanja koji je narušen sa svekolikom privatizacijom. Želimo razgovarati o radništvu. Mi konkretno tu imamo u Korčuli, ali to je problem cijele Hrvatske koja živi od turizma. To moramo jasno reći. Znači, cijela država živi od turističke sezone. Mi počinjemo imati turističko roblje. Znači, ljudi koji rade u turizmu rade u katastrofalnim uvjetima, loše su plaćeni. Mi smo u Europskoj uniji, ušli smo u eurozonu, imamo ogromno povećanje troškova života, a radnici su strahovito loše plaćeni, tako da ljudi počinju raditi jako puno na crno. I kako se to rješava? Rješava se uvozom radne snage. Znači, imamo jako puno radnika iz Indije, Nepala, Filipina i ti radnici onda rade u još gorim uvjetima, dakle to je jedna zastrašujuća situacija. Čuju se tu i tamo samo glasovi o tome kako ti radnici žive i u kakvim nastambama su smješteni kao životinje, to je doista ono stvarno strašno. Tako da su to stvari o kojima moramo razgovarati, a osim tih naših ljudskih prava, moramo govoriti o prostoru, znači o uništavanju jedinog resursa još koji nam je ostao, to je prostor i on se nepovratno uništava, znači betonizacijom i nemilosrdnim iskorištavanjem. Mi to u Korčuli to vjerojatno ne vidite zato što smo mi još uvijek relativno očuvani, ali na našoj obali ima jako puno primjera potpuno uništenih prostora. Mi smo u Korčuli konkretno imali sreću da smo imali neke ljude koji su nekada ranije osmislili urbanističke strategije, pa smo danas još uvijek sačuvani, ali to nije vječno i to je nešto što moramo pokušati pošto po to sačuvati. Tako da su to isto teme koje mi moramo adresirati kao lijeve opcije. To je nešto čime se moramo baviti, a ja to sad govorim evo lokalno, mikrolokalno. I naprosto kultura koju moramo sačuvati, kulturni radnici kojima moramo izaći u susret jer mi, ljevica bez kulture ne može. I jednostavno mislim da je to nešto na čemu moramo inzistirati, da ne izgubimo tu kulturu, tu toplinu, taj romantizam, renesansu, da je to nešto što je naše. Naprosto ne smijemo to propustiti. Ovo je zapravo to bilo kratko predstavljanje. Meni je drago da je Aleksandar rekao neke jako dobre stvari. Sabina je bila jako iskrena po pitanju SDP-a i hvala joj na tome. Ja se nekako nadam uvijek da ćemo odavde izaći sa nekim konkretnijim rješenjima. Da to neće biti samo neka slova na papiru, neki novi manifest, nego da ćemo nešto konkretno zaključiti što treba napraviti da bi možda mogli u budućnosti koalirati. Jer ako ne budemo nešto promijenili konkretno, mislim da tih koalicija neće biti, nećemo biti poželjni. Evo, to je moj stav. Hvala vam.
Thank you very much, Vinka, also, but not only for keeping the time. And now Harald Trock, who is a member of the Austrian Parliament. Again, recommend 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I'm for the first time at the Korčula School, and I'm for the first time in Korčula itself. Not in Croatia, though. I do have a number of friends in Croatia, about which I'm very proud. Well, first of all, of course, what I'm saying has to do from where I come and how my standpoint is to various issues. So I come from Vienna, I come from Austria, a militarily neutral country. So maybe you can imagine that also on the Ukraine war, I do have views which might differ from the one or the other transatlantic thinker or from NATO countries. Well, first of all, the European Union is weaker. The loss of the United Kingdom is a heavy loss for Europe, and social democracy is weaker. How many prime ministers do we have? How is the majority in the European Parliament? We can be proud to have the Chancellor, the Bundeskanzler of Germany, but the rest is a bit sad, actually. But Germany, of course, is now in a position where 100 years ago Germany was dreaming of, but under Angela Merkel it has become the dominating force in Europe. Without Germany, nothing goes, nothing happens. That's the reality. Now, when I'm critical of the social democratic strength and position in Europe, I think it's time to find self-critical words. I heard a number of contributions where I missed self-criticism. And I think this is not the right moment. The right moment in our situation is to make critical and self-critical analysis. So, of course, the main social democratic and social topics, which also have to do with winning elections, must be a fair society, the question of labor, peace and stability. And of course, there are a lot of minor issues. Now, I appreciate very much yesterday of his critical words to the situation. And today, actually, Sabina Glasovac and our Swedish colleague, Paula, yes. And finally, also, you, I don't remember your name, sorry. I found these very good thoughts about a self-critical analysis. Now, there was also the question, we have to transform, we have to learn. Now, is it interesting to look at 4 successful campaigners? Now, these 4 successful campaigners are Orban, Vučić, Meloni, and Erdogan. They were successful, weren't they? I think nobody can question it. The problem is that politics are just measured in our parliamentary system by the winning of elections. If you lose, it's like the Roman emperors did. You have to win elections, that's the point. And so Orban, Vučić, Meloni, Erdogan won elections, and I think they did quite smart, actually. I was from OECD, I was election observer in Hungary at the parliamentary elections, and it was incredible. Orban changed completely his campaign. You know, he had this 4 questions. The elections were strongly connected with a referendum. Also, one question was anti-gay, anti-lesbian. But he completely changed the campaign and made the Ukraine war, energy, and that to his topics. And he took the NATO country Hungary out of the system, and Hungary was more neutral and is more neutral. The NATO country Hungary is more neutral in this war than Austria. So, and in Hungary, the war is unpopular. It's unpopular. The Hungarians say, why should we pay for that war? Why should we pay? The Hungarian minority is treated badly in the Ukraine, very badly. And so the Hungarians stay out, and this is a popular line. Of course, this cannot be copied totally, but in this world, in this changing world of war, instability, the conflict, USA and China is growing day per day. And it's a very dangerous thing, and I think it's more dangerous than the Ukraine war. Because America is obviously not giving in. In the Cambodia meeting between Xi Jinping and Biden, Biden said, Chinese friends, stop the armament. But the USA will not stop. They will go on. But the Chinese should stop their armament program. Hey, this is not the real world anymore. The real world is a multipolar world. And so Europe has to face this coalition of the BRIC countries. They are fed up. And the African countries are fed up with the French policy in the former colonies. And we in Europe have to be very attentive about that. We have to be very attentive about that. And the successes of China and Russia in Africa have to do with many European mistakes in this continent. Now, I was yesterday, in a short comment, I demanded a socio-economic approach. I did not agree with Soren on many issues, I must say. And for me, is the Ukrainian war not just a war of values? That's just propaganda. I mean, the Ukrainian war is about ethnic groups. And when we had the topic here yesterday, can we learn for the Ukrainian war from Yugoslavia? It's about ethnic things. It's about borders. It's about the respect also of the national groups in the Ukraine. And there have been a lot of violations against the Russians, against the Romanians, against the Polish, against the Tatars, and against the Hungarians. Nobody in Europe was criticizing that, what the Ukrainians did. And also the anti-gay and anti-lesbian attitude in the Ukraine, the same as in Russia. Now, I have to keep short, so my message is social democrats have to be on the side of peace, not on the side of war. When Comrade Maria João meant we have to win this war, oh, come on. Social democrats should not take over this war language. I'm critical of that. Our language, our policy must be the policy of peace, even if we're called traitors. I'm not that old, but World War I, Austria, after heavy mistakes, and we were at the stake at the beginning of the war, we tried to get out. Kaiser Karl tried to get out of this damned war, stop the daily killing. And stop the daily killing also is an issue in the Ukraine. So I'm at least happy that Anthony Boehmer said peace and the ceasefire is an aim. We have to fight for that. And maybe the end of the line is land for peace. Maybe. But that's the negotiation between Russia and the Ukraine. Let me give just my final sentences. 10 minutes. It's about identity. In a changing world, in a world of war, of armament, of tensions, of course, identity and stability are most important. So we should not leave these issues to the right wing, but language, home, neighborhood, culture, family, these are values. And these are especially values for less educated people, for the less educated. They look and they need the stability. So not leave these topics, language, home, neighborhood, culture, family. Actually, it's about nation. We should not leave nation to the nationalists. That's very important, and I think the question of home country, neighborhood, should be social democratic topics. Thank you.
Now, we have finished with our speakers are discussant, and the program foresees open debate, but I fear we are too strict in times, and I think we should give the floor to Maria João for the final comment. Thank you, Maria. The floor to you.
This has been a very important discussion, and we need real discussion, open, frank discussion. We are in a family initiative. This is the Korčula School, and we need to say whatever you think is right to be said. It's impossible to summarize everything which happened this morning, but I will underline three main points. One is we are here together because we want to regain the leadership, the progressive leadership of the European project and of our national presence in European countries. We know that for this, we need to have open-minded approach to build up a coalition of progressive forces. I must say that we don't have a single recipe. I'm speaking from also my experience in Portugal, where we have a unique situation of a majority, absolute majority, backing a socialist government, but this is a unique situation. Beyond this, we need to be open-minded on the kind of alliance we do, provided we are the ones to lead, provided there is consistencies in the overall coalition agenda. And we know that at the end of the day, our victory will depend on us working directly with citizens. And it's important to recall that our electoral base is working class, and it is also middle classes. And yes, middle classes are shrinking in Europe, and we need to reverse this trend. And this brings me to the second idea, which was pointed out by many of you, is that we need to focus on the real problems of people. And they are jobs, working conditions, social protection. We need to bring a new hope to young people in our countries, because there is a fundamental imbalance in European construction, creating brain drain of young people, and we need to reverse this. Yes, there is a demographic problem, aging, but let's make it very clear on the issue of birth rate. Our progressive approach is to create conditions for women and men to decide the number of children they want to have. This is our approach. And then migration. Yes, migration remains the extremely sensitive issue, which will have great impact in the upcoming European elections and national elections. And we need to strike the right balance. Yes, there is a difference between asylum seekers and economic migrants. Yes, we need to uphold our values of protecting the right to protect asylum seekers. We need migration in a managed way. And for all these, we need to have a European border, but a European border managed according to progressive political values. My final point is about geopolitics, because we have a war in our continent. And behind this war, there is an attempt to disrupt the global order in general. This is a time of geopolitics. Again. And for me, let me tell you very clearly, of course, our goal should be peace and ceasefire. But don't make a mistake. We are dealing with a Putin's-led Russia, which represents everything we are against about. This is much beyond ethnical differences. Of course, they are. And probably the Ukrainian government has made mistakes, and we should impose also the respect for minorities and an open society. That's for sure. But what is at stake is much deeper than that. What is at stake is the risk of an autocratic, even a totalitarian political system to spread across Europe and beyond. So Europe needs to have a global strategy to deal with this. First of all, is to support Ukraine, clearly. Second is to bridge alliances with other countries, because of course we don't want to have a breakdown of the multilateralism with this shock between West, G7 on one hand, and BRICS on the other hand. This is taking place in front of our eyes right now. See the BRICS summit last days. But the answer from the progressive side is to say, we want to update the multilateral system to make it an inclusive, democratic, and fairer system. And finally, we need to draw the implications of this war for the urgency of enlargement. Enlargement has become a political but also a moral imperative. And we need to start with the Western Balkan countries. This is a central task ahead, and this should be presented by us as a top priority during European elections. This is our duty. I really believe. So these are the ideas I'd like to underline, and again express our gratitude as FAPS to be part of this initiative. This is really a precious moment of us being together with frank discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you for, I cannot say synthesizes, but focuses on 3 main points. Now, we are at the end of this very rich session. We have now just 10 minutes, not longer than 10 minutes break for coffee, and then we will convene for the second session, which will be followed by a third session on gender pay gap. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Tom. See you soon. Ciao.